We're going to welcome you to a very important live stream. This is Let's Talk Geopolitics. I'm one of your hosts, Cyrus Johnsson, and we have a special guest coming in today, CIA analyst Larry Johnsson. And we're excited to really break down this stream because, guys, what you've seen in the last couple of days is quite remarkable. This is something that we've been talking about for a long time. Of course, it wasn't going to be as easy as signing a memorandum and saying that there's going to be peace. We've already seen some huge battles in the Middle East right now. We have seen Iran being attacked. We have seen Iran retaliating. And to help us break it down, we've got Alex from Reporterfy Media and, of course, Larry Johnsson. Larry, how are you today, my friend?
Hey, man, I'm here. How are you guys?
Outstanding. Good to see you, Larry.
Good. Thanks so much for joining. Yeah, good to see you, as always. Larry, let's just jump right into it. I want to get into this rapid fire that we're seeing between the United States and Iran. We see that Iran is claiming that they've hit military assets, United States military assets in the Middle East. We see that, whatever you want to call it, a peace, a truce, a ceasefire, didn't really last more than a day. Are we really just at the start of a whole new round of this conflict?
I think so. Look, the United States violated, breached, whatever term you want to use for the MOU. The Iran and the United States agreed that they were going to refrain from all military action against each other and from making threats. Well, Trump violated that early on, threatening to, end Iran, and he's done it a couple of times since, including yesterday, destroy the civilization. Just the most outrageous declaration. But there's not a single word in that MOU that says Iran cannot enforce its Persian Gulf Strait Authority protocols that it has set in place. And those protocols stipulate that if you want to come through the Strait of Hormuz, you got to fill out an application. And originally they're saying you have to pay a cover fee, but they've said for 60 days we're not going to charge a cover fee. But this is still what you got to do. And so any ship that wants to go through, file with the Iranian Republican Guard Corps a request. Well, the United States and the Brits decided, let's screw with the Iranians. Let's tell them that we're going to ignore that. So on Friday, got to keep the date straight here, early Friday morning, they tried to send a ship called the Ever Lovely through the strait, and he got hit with the drone by the Iranians. Said, "Hey, no, you're not supposed to do that. Back out." The United States took umbrage at that and made a big deal about launching. We struck a bunch of Iranian targets. Now, the fact of the matter is, when you look at what they did, it was just, they're blowing up sand. It was sort of I call it political military theater. Then that was followed up by about 10 hours later, the U.S. and the U.K., and when I say the U.K., it's called the U.K. Maritime Trade Operation. So they told another oil tanker, hey, why don't you go ahead, use this lane that's over by the coast of Oman, go through there, ignore Iran. Iran then hit them again with a drone. And then, fed up with that, struck a U.S. military base in Bahrain. So right now, the first one to attack the other was the United States. Iran retaliated. Then they sent in a second ship. And again, Iran attacked that. And then the United States unleashed a much larger attack on Saturday against Iran. And Iran just said, okay, enough. And they bombed the hell out of two airfields that the U.S. was using, one in Kuwait and one in Bahrain. So we'll see now where this ping pong match stands. Is the United States going to continue to try to thwart Iran's control of the Strait of Hormuz, or are they going to go along with the MOU? All the U.S. had to do is tell these other ships, look, go file the paperwork with Iran, go through the Strait, and traffic would be flowing. There wouldn't be a problem. But that's not what they did. They said, basically, we're going to we're going to tell Iran, you can go screw yourself. You can't tell us what to do. And Iran said, yeah, watch. And so that's where we stand. I think the MOU, the first article of the MOU has been completely violated. It's up to Iran to decide whether it's going to continue to abide by it.
Larry, I have a question. I'm always concerned a lot about trade and world trade. Mm-hmm. And we have cut off a very vital line. A lot of the people are looking at the market and saying, hey, oil's back to normal. I'm not sure about the price at the pump. But there's something that I would like to discuss here. And I was doing my research and I was going back on oil VLCC disasters, and a name kept continually coming to my mind, and it was the Exxon Valdez cleanup. And that had a price tag of anywhere from $2.5 billion to $7 billion per container. Now, we've seen a backlog there, and I'm hearing the backlog has to do with insurance. I'm just wondering, you're an analyst of the CIA. Does the Americans really understand that it will only take one I sunk your battleship to really set off a chain reaction where this area might be not insurable for the next 10, 20 years? I'd like to hear your insights on, how dangerous of a game are the American fleets playing down there?
Well, it's dangerous on many levels. I mean, you outlined one. If one of these tankers gets blown open and fouls the waters there, they'll be looking at a massive cleanup. But the other disconnect is this, and I was looking forward to talking to you guys to see if you've got any explanation for it. So I'm assuming we all took a basic course in economics, in college, assuming you went to college. And even if you did go to college, you might have had a course in high school. And the fundamentals of that economics course is they say, look, this is how the world works. If you've got a demand for something, like you say, everybody wants a cup of coffee, but you only got enough coffee for 5 people and you got 20 people that want coffee, you know what? The price of that coffee is going to go to the highest bidders, which means it gets bid up. And similarly, if the supply of that coffee goes down even further, the price is going to react. But what's not going to happen is if you got less coffee, the price of it's going to go down. That doesn't happen in normal economic theory. Yet that's exactly what we're seeing right now with oil. You're sitting there scratching your head going, okay, right off the bat on February 28th, 20% of the world's supply of oil shut off. 20%. That's continued now for 4 months. And there hasn't been some other country that stepped up and said, hey, I can replace that. And in fact, you could argue that some of the damage that's been done into the Russian oil fields or refineries has further reduced the supply. And yet, the price has fallen. People are popping champagne corks.
I can enlighten you on what that really means. So there are 2 types of pricing in oil. One is dated Brent, when it actually gets to the refineries, gets refined, gets into the system, the container trucks or the trucks that deliver to the gas station, the end user. That's one price. Then we have on the market the paper prices. Okay, and those can be easily manipulated, through derivatives. You and I have had that discussion many times.
Yes.
And derivatives are quite powerful. They're quite a powerful device that can easily convince the public that everything's back to normal. Life is good. But what happens is eventually, if some of these get either oversold or shorted into the market, there's a disaster waiting to happen. And again, the best example I can give is, hey, everybody, the housing market is great in 2006, 2005. Loans, anybody can get a loan. The party is on. Pop the champagne. everybody should be a owner of a home in America, right? Well, then we have Peter Schiff saying, wait a minute, these numbers don't add up. How is it possible? Somebody on a salary from a restaurant can own a $500,000 house. But that's the party. And that is, well, we'll call it mortgage-backed securities or credit default swaps. Everything looks good. The subprime is great. Don't worry, interest rates are low. Business as usual. And then boom, the entire global economy goes into a meltdown, and we are still feeling the reverbs years and years and decades after. In this oil, I have said it many times, we are going to see this trade come out somewhere. Now, where is it going to come out? It might not necessarily come out in oil. And what I mean by that is, there are billions upon billions, and we know the size of the derivative market anywhere from $700 trillion to $1 quadrillion. People say, well, that number is not real, is it? It's real. What happens is when you see walls of money being shifted over, it's going to move into a new sector. And we started to see cracks in certain companies last week, and one of them was Apple. Can you believe this? One of the largest software and hardware companies on the planet that should have serious strength in buying power. They should be able to say to their suppliers, guys, if you raise these chips a little bit more in price, we're not going to buy from you. But no. Apple had one of its worst days in the last 10, 20 years on its shares by saying, we can't control this. We got to raise our prices. They've come up. Why did Apple's prices come up? Was it logistics? Was it the cost of doing, business with companies in Asia that used to have cheaper prices? They're now saying, hey, wait a minute. We have to ship these in a container 40 days across the seas. And, well, the price of shipping might go up. So when we look at the price on the, we'll call it the paper trading or the CME, and we see $71 or $72, $73 for the futures of oil, we think, business as usual. But it's not necessarily like that. And we will see this come out. This trade will come out somewhere.
Yeah, well, in fact, one of the that when they cut off when the Strait of Hormuz was shut down 28 February, 1 March, one of the major items that no longer was coming out, primarily out of Qatar, was helium. About, who knew, 44% of the world's supply of helium comes out of there. And I'm going, who cares about not having party balloons? Okay, we can live without somebody inhaling and speaking in a squeaky voice. Oh no, I didn't know that helium is a critical ingredient for making computer chips, huh? And what goes into those iPhones and iMacs and iPro? Oh, computer chips. So now all of a sudden, the price of one of the key inputs for producing that product has gone way up. And that's why, so we're starting to see the first fallout. The other thing, I've been walking around happily ignorant of middle distillates. I had no idea. And then a kind gentleman reached out to me and began schooling me. And after he schooled me, I went, I said, my God, why did you tell me this? I can't sleep at night now. So with middle distillates, it is the idea when you get a barrel of oil, only about 30%, 25 to 30% of it can be used to produce either jet fuel or diesel. So you get that barrel of oil, goes rolling into a refinery. The refinery's got to make a decision. What are we making today? We're making jet fuel or diesel, because there are two different processes. And so he said, well, we're going to make some jet fuel. But anyway, when you say that the demand out there, here's diesel, here's jet fuel, and life's good, comes the attack on Iran, all of a sudden the supply for both of those goes down 20%, and then we start that war, and the demand for jet fuel goes up. And so how do we deal with that? Well, let's draw on our strategic petroleum reserves, and countries around the world start doing that. Well, we're just about to run out. Those reserves are going to run out. And if this latest round now leads to a new escalation, the United States is going to be facing an interesting situation of having to decide, Do we shut down some civil aviation because the military's got the priority, or do we keep civil aviation going and say screw the diesel, so people have to they have to walk the food to the stores? Some interesting choices ahead of us.
Larry, Cyrus has said this many times on the show. He's talked about the supply here, these emergency supplies, and they take decades to build up that emergency supply. Cyrus, over to you. We've talked about this a lot here on Let's Talk Geopolitics.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, it's always interesting because, Alex and I, we were following the markets. We're looking at this. And, I love Alex's analogy of going back to 2005, 6, where everybody was buying a house. Yeah. Everything was good. I remember that time in America really well because at the time, it wasn't just buying one house. It was like, well, you know what? They're basically it's 0% financing. So you might as well get a second house, and that's when the greed really starts taking in, right? And people started, it got too easy, right? You buy a house for $200,000, it's only going up, guys. Buy another one because fast forward a year, it's going to be worth $300,000. It's free money. Just everybody get in. And if it sounds too good to be true, and everybody's doing it, it's going to blow up eventually. We did see that, and I think one thing we also have to address here, guys, is there was a very strategic moment that the United States actually launched this most recent attack, and it was exactly after the markets closed on Friday. And that is a massive, massive, piece of information because this is something that we've seen consistently from the Trump administration. And he mentioned this in his recent speech where he said, guys, we would put out positive news and the markets would go up. And then if there was negative news, the markets would go down. It was so funny from Trump that he would just basically start admitting that to the public, that, hey, we have this power to manipulate the market. And so the United States military confirmed that as well. They did not want that information to get out that they actually launched this attack. It was during the trading hours, but they didn't want that leaked out to the media, until the markets were closed. And of course, but the big one, Apple and a lot of these companies got crushed. A lot of these AI companies are starting to, come down from their 52-week highs. A lot of blood in the market already. The last couple of trading days, it's going to be an interesting trading week ahead. But I love Alex's, pointing out there where, you look at Apple, they should have that leverage in order to not be able to raise prices. But now the MacBook, it's going up $200. It's not an insignificant price hike. We're not saying, hey, we need to increase this by $20, $50. No, it's $200. It's quite a large increase, basically because of these supply chain crunches. We go talking about jet fuel. We saw, a couple weeks ago, probably about over a month ago now, Lufthansa, the German airliner, canceled I think it was 20,000 flights, that they had to cancel because of the rising jet fuel. So we're seeing, airline prices are going up. Everything is going to be, it's starting to break here a little bit. And I think that, everybody's so happy to celebrate. Okay, wow, oil's back down to, $78 a gallon, a barrel. Everything's good. We're back to normal, celebration. But, guys, this situation in the Middle East is nowhere close to being resolved. And if anything, we're just moving further down this escalation trap. And I think the key thing we got to really take away here is Iran has more leverage now than they've ever had in their history. And so, again, if the United States wants to, pull an attack, they want to do something, Iran always has that card now. They have a card. They can shut down that strait at will at any time. And they're not afraid to play that because, for Iran, this is an existential threat. They have to, they've had to survive, and they know that they cannot just give in to these U.S. Demands. We also know that Trump, he basically tried to cover, make sure everything was good for his big 80th birthday celebration. We've got the World Cup going on in the United States. We're just having this 250th anniversary, fair, which has been an absolute disaster in D.C. I don't know if you see the images from that, guys. It's absolutely just atrocious, how pitiful that looks, to actually celebrate America's 250th birthday. And, again, we're a week away from July 4th, the big celebration in America. So it's just amazing. I mean, I was watching World Cup, we see the United States as host actively bombing Iran, who's actually playing a match in the United States. I mean, you've never seen anything like that. I mean, as a host country of the World Cup, ever hosted a nation while simultaneously bombing them at the same time? I mean, it's just unbelievable. So I think there's a lot of cover up from the United States government. I think there's a lot of trying to save face right now because we've got this big 250th birthday for the United States of America. But deep down, right now, I think there's a lot of concern. There needs to be a lot of concern about this because this 60-day negotiation period is off to a horrific start. It couldn't actually gone any worse, but we kind of knew this was coming because, number one, Israel's not going to stop. We know that they're going to continue to keep going in bombing Lebanon and, doing what Israel does best. They've already said that, we have nothing to do with this deal. We're not going to sign it. We're not going to have anything to do with it because it does not match our interest. And quite frankly, Alex, we mentioned this last week on Let's Talk Geopolitics. 92% of Israelis think that Iran won the war already. So, that's not going to well.
Let me step in there, Cyrus. MOUs are, I'm just going to call it bullshit. Okay, it's window dressing for what the market.
That's a technical term. Yeah.
Thank you. But here's my question for you, Larry. America has said they have knocked the lights out of the Navy. They've knocked the lights out of the Army in Iran. They've knocked the possibility of any radar. You're an intelligence guy. What capabilities does Iran have? And I'd like to hear from, I hear they have pretty impressive missiles that they can still bring out. How much damage, if America puts, a knife to their neck here in the next couple of weeks and Trump follows through with his rhetoric about we will obliterate the country back into the Stone Ages, what kind of strike, you're the man to ask here, what kind of strike can the Iranians come back against these warships there or even Israel at that point?
Yeah, the power of Iran rests in its ballistic missile fleet. It was never a naval power. It wasn't a blue water navy. It had a few ships. Most of its so-called naval force exists of speedboats. Some of them are drones, unmanned. Others are manned, and they've got some pretty robust anti-ship missiles on them. The thing the Iranians understood was that they faced, by virtue of their size, they were at a disadvantage with respect to something like the United States. So they prepared accordingly. They built shelters into the cliffs, into the shoreline, so they're basically underground. So they're protected, and they can push those out at any time. So the Air Force, the so-called naval force we destroyed, was not a critical part of their defense. Similarly, the Air Force, they've never been a nation relying upon air power. Several of the combat jets they flew to Pakistan and they hit out the war there, so they're still intact. What the missile is the bread and butter of Iran's defense. They recognized back in 2003 that they would likely face an attack by the United States, so they began developing, designing, building these underground cities, and they built them to withstand a nuclear attack. That was the point. They were consulting with countries like North Korea and others. So they built these massive underground cities throughout, which have the capacity or the ability that you can launch missiles from those sites, and they don't have identifiable silos that we can easily try to target and bomb. And those missiles range from short range to long range. So that's if the United States continues to renew this attack, between the drones that Iran has, coupled with those missiles, I frankly am puzzled why they didn't actually destroy the air base at Ben Gurion in Israel, as well as the other air bases that Israel has, exclusively targeting those. Because you target those, you take out the airplanes, Israel no longer really has the ability to project any kind of force. So what we saw in last night's or let's see, today's Sunday. So in the Saturday response in the Persian Gulf, Iran went after airfields in Kuwait and Bahrain. and pounded them with multiple strikes with ballistic missiles. I suspect that they did significant damage to those, that they will no longer be able to be operating, at least in the short term. So that's what Iran's got, that capability. Let's look at the lack of capability on the part of the United States. We can't do anything with ground forces. So, paratroopers, Marines landing, that's out. Not going to happen. We can't do it. How about our ships? Our ships on the Navy have to stay about 200 miles offshore because the Iranian anti-ship missiles can reach anything within that 200-mile limit. So we got to stay far enough away. And it looks, even in the past, that wasn't enough. The so-called dryer fire, the dryer lint that caught on fire allegedly on the Gerald Ford and burned for 30 hours. God, man, there must have been a lot of lint. The U.S. has been good at hiding damage that the Iranians have inflicted. So that leaves us with air power. And here again, we're back to this issue of, if we're going to launch a massive airstrike, you've got to have these KC-135s to do air refueling, because when the aircraft take off from air bases in Jordan and in Israel, they've got a 1,000-mile flight ahead of them just to get over to the Persian Gulf. And those aircraft can only fly 500 miles before they run out of gas. So they've got to get refueled at least 2 times going and 2 times coming back. And so if you've got any number of aircraft in that attack, that means the number of tankers is going to increase. And so that ends up massively increasing your fuel consumption, which leads us back to the fact that we've lost 20% of the world's supply. It's gone for right now, and we haven't replaced it with anything. So at some point, if you keep drawing out on that reserve, you run out. And that's where we are. And nobody, the oil traders, they are ignoring this. I mean, it's crazy. I don't understand it.
Well, I'm going to add again to that. First of all, when we see that supply come out of the market, we also see that money supply come out of the market. And that pushes up inflation in other parts of the world here. I mean, the numbers that were just come out was, I think it was over 4% inflation. Now, if people enjoy 4 to 5% inflation in the United States, well, enjoy it, but it is not sustainable. Again, these oil prices, they take a little bit of time to catch up because some of these futures are forward sold. We see a lot of ETFs that react certain ways, even before that, but it's not necessarily news flow that pushes these oil prices immediately up or down. We can look at an ETF called UNG. This is natural gas. That hardly moved at all over the last 6 months. And it's in ETF, everybody can look it up. It's been trading between 10 and 12. It hasn't done anything. And here we are with Qatar that has lost a considerable amount of natural gas refinery, allow it to export that to other countries. This trade doesn't necessarily show up with oil at the start, but it will eventually come out. Now, we did see it spike to 130, 140, 150 dated Brent, and then it rolls back. But again, where does it show up? It's like this, Larry. We get to maybe enjoy, I'm a Canadian, so we love getting our potato chips every weekend before we watch a football game, and we usually buy the dip. Okay, that's just what we do as Canadians. Well, there's a deal on the chips, but the dip is very expensive. And this, what happens, and to give the best example, was what we said at the start of this show here. We saw the world's largest software and hardware company shock the market last week by saying, guys, we're going to have to go up a couple $100 per device, per laptop, per mobile. Now, people might say, well, that's okay. I got my mobile. I'm good. I'm clear. Well, what's next? What comes after that? What's next? Could be anything. Could be anything. It could be your price of groceries go up 10, 20, 30%. I'm sure our viewers, you guys can say in the comment section, Tell us what has gone up in prices in the last 2 to 3 months and what you anticipate to go up. We will see everything go up. We will see municipalities that have property tax on homes. You'll see homeowners associate, HOAs raise their prices. All of this eventually will come out. Some of it will be absorbed and some of it won't. And I understand it's mind-boggling to wake up and say, wait a minute, 20% of the world's supply. And I get the same question all the time. What's going on? Oh, look at, you said oil would be going much higher. Well, when it was about 80 and on this exact program, Let's Talk Geopolitics, when the war broke out, we said it's going to 120, 130, 140. It hit it. Now we're seeing a backtrack here in regards to prices. But this war isn't over, and by a long shot. So we might see a little bit of a price decrease here on oil. But again, let's bring Cyrus in. Cyrus, you live in, a part of the United States. Is it getting cheaper where you live?
Oh, I think that's the one thing that we've just seen extrapolated ever since COVID, really, right? I mean, we've seen the prices go up with COVID. I'm living in Las Vegas, which is, become one of the most expensive cities in America now. I mean, it's on par with New York City or Los Angeles as far as pricing. But, you mentioned the things as far as HOA fees and these things are going to go up. The issue as well here, Alex, is that, once Apple raises those prices are never going to come back down, right? That's the one thing that we also have to consider is once companies have an excuse like this, that say, hey, there is a legitimate reason why we're raising prices, but, that's going to be the new price, right? It's not like after this war is concluded and, the markets, return to normal and oil's at a normal price that we're going to say, hey, you know what? We can now reduce that MacBook by $200. Let's bring back the old pricing, for our customers, because guess what? You're going to need computers to do your job, right? So that's just going to get baked in. And, this is just more things that are going to be more expensive. So, if we look at a barrel of oil and how it gets refined and how many touch points it has in the world economy, you're going to see a lot of things start going up, right? It's the same thing where, Larry said, right, diesel fuel. Well, what's the biggest use of diesel fuel? Well, one of the biggest ones is, the semi trucks that are delivering food all over the nation, right? Like Larry said, are we going to walk the groceries to the grocery store? No, we need diesel fuel to get those semi trucks in there. So that's going up, that's going to be going up. And so your cost of groceries is going to continue to go up. Going out to a restaurant is going to be more expensive. Everything's going to get extrapolated here. And you're going to see that, in the washout here. So I think more, what I'm more concerned with is I'm just really concerned with the United States and how they seem to, Donald Trump admitted this. He had actually said, we had to get a deal with Iran because the global, reserves are at a dangerously low level. That's essentially why we've had to make this move. You see kind of this constant flip-flopping from the Trump administration, right? They don't know what they're doing. They have no idea. They have no strategy, no plan. When you talk to the MAGA, cult followers, their message is, well, you know what? Whose army's been destroyed? Whose navy's boats are all at the bottom of the ocean right now? They've got no leverage. They've got nothing. We've won this war. But yet, guys, you can look at the radar right now of the ships that are going through the Strait of Hormuz. That's closed. They're not moving right now, right? There's still 60 active mines, for gosh sakes, in the Strait. This is nowhere close to being a conclusion. So the idea that we have a 60-day MOU, like Alex had said, that's just complete BS. We almost knew from the beginning that was just, again, it's
window
a
dressing.
The Trump administration to try to. It's a signal, right? We need to send a signal. We need to win, right? We need to win. We need something that we can say that, hey, we've gotten a deal with Iran. But every single thing that they talk about, it is basically Iran immediately comes out on Twitter and says, no, that's false. And so all of a sudden, the United States says we are not giving them a single dollar. No money is going to be exchanged. And then, of course, it's like, well, no, we're actually unfreezing billions of dollars of assets, and we're going to be giving that so they can go towards the restructuring. That's all part of this deal. So it's very hard to actually understand the truth, because I think the United States government is literally trying to make this up as they go. They don't have the answers. They have no strategic plan here. And like Larry just said, guys, this is the game has shifted, right? We're not talking the game of battleships. This is not World War II, where you have these big military vessels that are firing missiles back and forth, and you have like an open combat, a naval combat on the open seas. This is much smaller, much more strategic. We're looking at the Ukraine war, for example. I mean, this is all drone war, right? This is not, this is how that war is being fought. This is how all future wars will be fought, is going to be, $10,000 drones that are going to be able to impact significant damage. So like you said, like Larry just said, the key to Iran is the ballistic missiles.
Yeah.
This is their key thing. They've never had a massive Navy from the beginning. Yeah. They don't need it.
Cyrus, I want to interject, and thank you for covering all that stuff. About half of that was the questions I was just gonna ask, but you've answered them. Larry, what's going to be the headline that we wake up to that Iran has unleashed something that will turn the heads of everybody? I know when the Russians fire the Rezhnik into Kiev, that gets a lot of people really nervous really fast, because nothing can be done. So if I wake up in the morning and I see a headline, what is that headline going to be that the Iranians done, where it just catches your breath, where you go, oh, this is really escalated now?
Well, they've done things that should have caught our breath, but because they've been covered up or downplayed, the world has, particularly Americans, haven't had a chance to wake up to it. So their ballistic missile capability to hit targets and not to hit them with precision. They hit. I learned, and Wall Street Journal came out with a pretty excellent article, surprisingly, about the amount of damage that Iran did to particularly the Fifth Fleet headquarters base in Bahrain. One of those systems that was destroyed. I don't know I barely know some of the details. The details, what I know is it's a ground station that is critical for communicating with a bunch of satellites, and those satellites somehow are involved with U.S. national defense. And when that ground station got taken out, all those satellites that were communicating with it, they were described to me as floating space junk. And apparently the senior military leadership at the Pentagon, when that happened, they freaked out. They were like, oh my God, what do we do now? So that's one of those things that was accomplished because of intelligence that the Chinese and or Russians provided Iran. Said, this is where you want to hit. Take this target out. Mm-hmm. So they continue to do that. I don't know if you've ever gone on to marinetraffic.com, a website that tracks naval ships going through, and you can around the world, but this one focuses in. You can go to look at the Strait of Hormuz. There's nothing coming out. Right now, the only ship that's actually right in the middle of the strait is named the Imperious, and it's headed towards a port in Oman, Faraja. So you don't have any major ships. The last one to pass through was something called Sal. And again, they're either going to Asia, but there's none of these ships coming out are going to Europe or the United States. So whatever problems they had getting crude, particularly the crude you need to make oil or diesel and jet fuel, they're not coming out. So right now, Strait of Hormuz is effectively shut down again, and so that should be reflected in trading on Monday when the market's open. But all this manipulation that's been going, it can't be guaranteed. But regardless of whether the markets are manipulating or responding, the actual reality is Apple's not going to be getting more cheaper computer chips. The liquid natural gas is not, the supply of that's not increasing. Supply of oil is not increasing. Sulfur, urea, not increasing. We've lost, and that loss has not been made up. So this is, this reminds me of that scene from the movie The Big Short, where the two kids who had, they thought they had, they're looking at it sort of with objective analysis, and they said it doesn't make sense. And the favorite line was the one guy goes, he's talking to the Brad Pitt carrier, and he says, it's like one and one equal fish, and that's where we are. We're at whatever math you want to use. It turns into something that has no relationship to math.
Larry, I want to bring up something since you just mentioned The Big Short, and I want to show this to the viewers because we've been talking about market manipulation. We've been talking about, hey, the price of oil, everything is fine, everyone. Well, that's other people talking. When I go to bed at night, I always, in my head, as a derivatives trader, try to understand what risk we are in for, because risk equals volatility. Volatility plays on the margins of these banks and how much they are leveraged, and they are leveraged huge, okay? Again, the world's derivative market is approximately 1 quadrillion. The global economy is about, with the Americans involved, around 82 trillion. Okay, so we're looking at a market 10 times the amount of the entire world economy. Now, Cyrus and I brought on Peter Schiff onto our show about 10 days ago, Cyrus?
Correct.
Something about 10 days ago. Now, Peter Schiff is he's called the housing crisis back in 2006, 7, and 8. He was pretty much laughed off of the stations at that time. And he was saying, guys, this doesn't make sense. It's going to crash. It's going to be bad. You can watch a video clip on the internet that's called Peter Schiff Was Right. I think there's 2 editions to it. He's made a prediction on this company that he hasn't managed to get off of his Twitter feed for the last year. But he has targeted a company called Strategy. Now, Strategy is a company that is one of the largest Bitcoin purchasers. And I'm just going to be clear now. I don't own any Strategy. I don't own any Bitcoin. I am a derivatives trader. That's all I'll say. But when it comes to this example video, Strategy was a company over the last year here that broke new highs of about $400 a share plus. And it is one of the largest buyers of Bitcoin. Well, something happened Friday. We're going to play a little clip here of Peter Schiff predicting this 2 weeks ago, and we'll show you where these stock graphs are. Remember, this is one of the largest owners of Bitcoin in the world, okay, for the tune of 50 billion plus. Let's roll this clip from a little over a week and a half ago. And this is Peter Schiff's latest video. Here we go.
I've been trying to find an answer for Michael Saylor's Strategy. I cannot. I've tried so hard to make sense of the numbers that they say. He's saying we got billions of Bitcoin. We're the largest publicly traded company. I don't get these numbers. Something is really, really wrong with these numbers, and I kind of think that it's a pyramid scheme. And I want your assessment of it, if you could.
As far as strategy, strategy is only strategy is desperately pumping up Bitcoin at this point, because the way strategy originally worked was people were dumb enough to pay a price for strategy shares that was like double the value of the Bitcoin per share. And so strategy was able to sell stock for $1 and then go buy Bitcoin and basically buy it for 50 cents on the dollar. So he would sell $1 worth of strategy and get $2 worth of Bitcoin. And so every time he did that, the Bitcoin per share went up. And that allowed him to talk about Bitcoin yield. What is my Bitcoin yield? How much more Bitcoin am I generating by selling my overpriced stock and buying Bitcoin? Well, he couldn't do that anymore because the stock went down and it trades now at a discount. And so he can't sell stock and buy Bitcoin, because if he does it, he generates a negative yield. He reduces the Bitcoin per share. So when he got into that box, he came up with this idea of these preferreds where, hey, you know, I'm going to sell these preferred shares. I'm going to pay 10%, 11% dividends. And then I'm going to take the money I get by selling these preferreds. I'm going to use that to buy Bitcoin. And so now because obviously, yes, people want 11% yield, right? That's a good yield. They're not buying strategy anymore to get Bitcoin. They're buying it to get an 11% yield, because Saylor is bribing people with these high yields so he can take that money and go buy Bitcoin with it. But the problem is he's borrowing money and then he's buying something that generates no cash flow, no income. How is he going to pay what he's committed to pay in these dividends? He has to just keep selling more. Well, now he can't even do that, because for a while he kept selling more shares of Stretch to buy more Bitcoin. But now Stretch is trading at, what, 95? He can't sell it. He can't sell it at 100 anymore, unless he wants to raise the yield up to like 12% or whatever it has to be.
We'll have a look at the graph here with strategy and Stretch at the end. It doesn't look good at all. Anyway, these are two charts. One of them lost about 30% last week. Remember, this is one of the largest holders of Bitcoin. It's a multi-billion-dollar market cap on these companies. And again, I say to you, Larry, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. So when we're staring down the barrel of oil at around $70, that's trading when all hell's breaking loose in the Strait of Hormuz. Window dressing by the U.S. government. They're using very tactical devices like derivatives to probably either prop it up or short it down. Maybe working potentially with some of the largest banks in the world. We know that JP Morgan is a huge player. We know that Goldman Sachs is a huge player in this. And a lot of these banks, they operate what we call the Chinese wall, where they will say, well, we're quite regulated, but we can lend a hedge fund $500 million and they can go out and do whatever they want because, well, they don't have clients. They're just a hedge fund, so they're not really regulated. Anyway, that's it for my segment. I'm going to pass it over to Cyrus now, and we'll see you guys at the end. Okay, guys? Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Alex, thanks so much. So guys, just to finish that up, I mean, 6 weeks ago, that stock was about $130. It's down 60% in the last 6 weeks. And, you know, I think a big thing that we're seeing here, you know, Larry, is, you know, just the leverage that other countries are starting to have. You know, you'll start looking at China. You start looking at, I was doing a lot of research on just how China has actually been able to help the global economy, because they're the one country that hasn't tapped into those reserves. You know, they've actually had enough oil that they've been supplying some of their Asian partners. And, you know, Larry, what do you think other countries around the world, you know, how are they looking at this? And, you know, like the Chinas, the Russias, how are they looking at this conflict, you know, as far as the United States and Iran?
Well, we're witnessing, or we're living through a global reset of the financial order. The financial order that was established in the wake of World War II, the Bretton Woods system, complete with IMF, World Bank, and then initially a gold standard, but then evolved to the petrodollar. That the foundation of that is crumbling before our eyes, and a complete new alternative is emerging. And China, with Russia, they are the leaders in this. And this was all made possible because of U.S. sanctions, U.S. bullying, U.S. threats, where the U.S. would use its financial tools to try to coerce other countries into behaving in a certain way. And so, like when Russia was cut off from SWIFT, and SWIFT, for those who aren't aware, it's basically it's let's call it an email system between banks, how they move money. Bank A will tell Bank B, hey, we're sending X amount of dollars to this account, or X amount of currency to another account, and that's how the banks would settle the transaction of funds. The problem with that is it's an analog system. So think about it like your own email system. You got a spam folder. So if one of those messages about shifting money from one account to another goes to spam and you don't see it for a couple of days, that's a problem. So China, as a result of shutting Russia out of that, and the Chinese recognizing it, the Chinese and Russians came up with this thing called CIPS, C-I-P-S, Cross-Border Interbank Payment System, that China set up as digital. So now you're not worrying about losing email. It's happening real time within seconds, and the number of banks around the world are starting to line up to use that in lieu of using SWIFT, or they still use SWIFT, but they're now moving to use CIPS more frequently. On top of that, you have people buying. They're no longer buying oil with dollars. That was the whole scheme that Henry Kissinger constructed with the Saudis way back in the 70s. That, okay, we'll go about the gold standard, but now everybody wants to buy oil, they buy with dollars, and that allows the dollar to stay central. Except now, like when Iran's selling its oil, it's accepting payment with yuan, with Chinese currency, not with US dollars. And so then that cascades over into, you look at the trend lines that are taking place globally, are more, usually in times of crisis, in times of war, people go to the safest currency. They go, let's go buy U.S. treasuries. The opposite is happening now. People, instead of lining up to buy treasuries, they're putting money into China, and they're buying gold and silver. So all of a sudden, the United States no longer has this credit card that we can use at will. And I liken us. The United States is like that kid in college whose parents gave him a credit card at the start, said, hey, whatever you need, just use the card. Kid was buying himself Lamborghinis. Now all of a sudden the parents get the bill and they go, holy mother of God, we're not going to pay for that. And so they're letting you know, hey, you're cut off. So the United States no longer has that credit card that it once had. And that's what we're seeing to start to unfold. And all of that's taking place in the midst of this conflict, this war with Iran. And the one thing we didn't talk about today that should have everybody worried as hell is we're moving towards a war where Russia is going to be attacking Europe. Not because Russia is aggressive, but it's because of what Europe and the United States are doing to Russia. It's going to expand the war. So we're heading into a risk where we could see the use of tactical nuclear weapons in Europe.
Oh, wow. I'm going to ask a follow-up on that one. I think we should talk about that briefly. We still got a couple of minutes here, but I'm glad you brought up the gold and, this CIPS system that China is launching. Everybody, I do have a new video that's going out later this evening that you guys will see on my channel, because very interesting. China is launching a new it's actually a new gold program that they're going to be basing in Hong Kong. It actually launches next month. So it's launching in July. In preparation for this, you have a ton of Hong Kong banks that are actually buying physical. They're actually bringing in tons of physical gold into Hong Kong as we speak. Of course, the Chinese government has been buying gold for the last 19 consecutive months. They had their biggest purchases of gold all of last month. So they're very aggressively going after this because they want to really make sure that the Chinese renminbi has that international exposure. And what they're doing is they're backing a lot of it by gold, because the renminbi is never going to have that same type of trust as far as the US dollar, that they have enjoyed for so long. But like Larry said, with these sanctions and then the confiscation of, Russia's foreign reserves, this has changed the game. This is why we're in this new multipolar world. China sees this as an opportunity. So I've got a whole video breaking this down, how China has this whole new currency, kind of plan that they have to really internationalize the renminbi. We even saw Citibank came out and said that the conditions right now are absolutely the best conditions for renminbi internationalization. But to help that, China is saying, well, why don't we go ahead and stockpile a lot of gold, to really back our currency and make sure that more people have trust in that. So you're going to see a lot of that moving forward. Larry, we got a couple more minutes here, but I want to just get your thoughts on, the Russian war. If you could give us a little bit of insights into that. I know our guests our viewers are interested in that, because one of the things that I've heard in the last week on Twitter and on the media is that, Zelensky's winning, Russia's done, this is, this war has flipped on its head, and, the Ukrainians now have all the power. But, I'd really like to get your expert analysis on that and what you think, because I want to give you that floor, because you mentioned that Russia's going to be expanding this war. I'd like to know where you think this is going.
Yeah, the Ukraine is losing. There's no doubt about that. What has happened is the Europeans and the United States have actually stepped up their support to Ukraine, so that Ukraine's able to launch. They're launching more drone and missile strikes into Russia and going deeper into Russia. Now, yes, they blow up some things. They've damaged some refineries, but it is not at all affecting Russia on the strategic level. It's not weakening it. And we continue to see Russia steadily advancing across, draw like the closed end of a parenthesis, it looks like a reverse C. That's represents the front in Ukraine. The top is Sumy. Then you go to Kharkiv. The middle of that parenthesis will be the Donetsk area, with Luhansk and Donetsk both. And then you come down to Zaporizhia, and then at the bottom is Kherson. All across that, the Russians are moving forward. Yet, in desperation, they keep attacking. So the Ukrainians have upped their attacks on civilian targets, made possible by intelligence that the West is providing. And then at the same time, they're openly, Germany in particular, are openly talking about we're going to go to war with Russia. Putin delivered a speech last Tuesday, the 23rd, to all the graduates of like their military academies, like West Point, Air Force Academy, Naval Academy, and the FBI Academy, the equivalent there. And basically his message was this: we're facing a situation like the Soviet Union faced before the German invasion in June of 1941, June 22nd, 1941 to be precise. That was called Operation Barbarossa. And he said basically the Soviet Union was caught unprepared for that and suffered terribly. We're not. We are ready for that, and we are going to prevent it. It was basically his message. And that Europe had better rethink what it's doing or else. So that was the message coming out of Russia. If you followed the comments of one of their leading academics, Sergei Karaganov, I know Sergei, and the West tries to portray him as sort of a nutcase, but he's been quite clear. He said, look, the reason this is happening is that Europe has lost its fear of Russia as a nuclear power. And he says, and the only way we may be able to reestablish the proper respect for our capabilities is to have to use nukes. Now, he's not advocating it, but I think he's recognizing that where this is headed is that these factories that in Britain, in Germany, in Poland that have been providing weapons to Ukraine, they're going to get attacked at some point. And it could be as soon as by the end of September. And when that happens, the West is going to try to retaliate. And at that point, this war is going to escalate. But Russia will take the gloves off at that point, because they're seeing this as a potential existential threat. And that, as Putin was saying, the last time we faced this kind of threat was 1941, and that ended up costing the lives of 27 million Russians or Soviet citizens. We're not taking that risk again.
Yeah. Well, Larry, I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. I want to be respectful of it. We're coming up to the hour here, and I think it's a perfect conclusion there. I mean, I think from our big takeaway from here today, guys, is, this is why we run the Let's Talk Geopolitics show every Sunday, is we want to give you guys the latest updates. We're going to we talk market, we talk wars, we're talking about where this is going. I think the conclusion here is we're very much at the start of things. I know we've been covering this war for 3 months already, but it is nowhere close to being over. And, we need to have these great insights from our guests like Larry Johnsson. Thank you so much for your time today, sir. It's always a pleasure to connect with you.
Before you go, Larry, just for our audience, maybe we have some new viewers that have just joined. A lot of people have been asking in the comments, where can I find Larry? Please, can you let our viewers know where we can find you? And of course, we will have all those attached links in our description below, everyone.
Sure. Sonar21.com is my main base. Also, Pepe Escobar and I have started a new YouTube channel called Transition Protocol, hosted by Zulfikar Ali, a Pakistani American. We've got some pretty good information that's been provided by a couple of sources we have developed in Pakistan. So those two places would get you. I just wanted to say, as sort of a closeout, one thing that people ought to look at that just shows you this disconnect between reality and the government spin. One of our main combat platforms to use against Iran is the F-35. Last week, in testimony before Congress, the Air Force admitted the operational readiness of the F-35 is between 25% and 30%. Okay? That means out of 100 of aircraft, we've only got like 25 to 30 out of that 100 that can fly. And on top of it, the latest delivery, when the Lockheed Martin finished producing that F-35, in the nose cone, there's supposed to be this radar. Well, the radar can only be made if you get magnets from China. China's telling us, screw you, we're not selling the magnets. So what did they do? They went to Gold's Gym, and they got about 60 pounds worth of weight plates and stuffed that in the nose of the F-35. Think about this. This is where we're at. I mean, it's crazy. Sorry.
Looking forward to having you back on, Larry. Always a pleasure. Our audience just rave for days after you come on our show, and looking forward to having you back on here.
Hey, guys.
Yeah, absolutely, Larry. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Good man. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, let me just cut in here. I'm just going to show Larry's Sonar 21 website here for the viewers. There it is there. Don't forget to support Larry. He's a great guy. Amazing that we can have these type of people on Let's Talk Geopolitics on our Sunday, Cyrus, and what a turnout today. Let's step into some other topics here that are important. I know you and I and our editors have been behind the screens for the last couple of days preparing some pretty cool stuff. Fire away, sir. Once you're done, I will wrap it up with just a little 60 seconds, 90 seconds on what's happening in China here. And great to see you in China, my friend, very soon. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. I want to play this clip for you guys. This is quite amazing because when you talk about, let me just get this one. When you talk about the United States and how do we actually understand Iran, I want you to understand this is the average intelligence for many Americans. This is a little bit of a comedy clip, but it's actually real life. So let's play this clip.
Bomb Iran more?
Yes, take out some more of their infrastructure.
You seem to have some kind of strong opinions on the Iran war, some ideas about how maybe you believe we're going to win in our negotiations, right?
Yes.
All right. Just for our viewers, just point it out on the map for us so we know where Iran is, and then we know exactly where we're talking about.
Okay. Oh, you want me to point it out? I would say somewhere in here, but I'm not sure. How'd you say? I always see the little picture. I've never seen it like there.
Oh, okay.
somewhere in the Middle East. And so
Yeah.
that's the reason why I was thinking in this zone. You know, I haven't sat down there
Right.
and did push pins on a
Found
on
it,
a,
yeah.
on a wall map, if you know what I mean.
You were pointing at Italy, I think.
Well, I just looked for the gray, and I know it's a little small area.
Yeah. It's over here. It's pretty big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
A dog-legged from Italy.
Yeah, I mean, we can laugh about that, and Alex, I like to bring in some comedy, but the sad part about this is this represents many Americans that are just very clueless about the world outside of our borders, and the problem is look at the thing you said, somewhere over here is this little small area. It's not. It's actually massive. Iran is a huge country. It's 4 times the size of Iraq. And the insight that we learned from Larry today is if you're gonna be launching U.S. fighter jets, Alex, you're gonna need those refueling planes, right? It takes 1,000 miles to get from the nearest base, right? So you're talking bases in the Middle East. When they're departing those fighter jets, they only can go 500 miles. They're going to need to refuel in the air in order to get there to be able to hit those targets. Alex, whatever happened to that fighter jet pilot? Did we ever actually talk to him?
Waiting. Where is he? Where is he?
Where is he?
Shouldn't he be on every talk show around North America? The Letterman show. I mean, come on. Where is he?
Yeah, I mean, this. And I've got another clip for everybody. I want to show you this one because this one is, very interesting. It talks about the last great American president. Just listen to what he said. This is a very fascinating clip.
I have made it clear to the Israeli leadership that I do not support their expansionist ideas.
Oof. What happened to him in Dallas again?
The indigenous people of that land have rights that cannot be ignored. We must find a fair solution, not one dictated by any single group.
This ideology, we think, probably costed him his life. Really, truly feels like the more I learn about this man, he was truly the last great United States president.
Yeah, and I mean that's a very sobering clip there, Alex, because you see JFK, who many consider arguably one of our best presidents, certainly in that conversation. And, we saw him standing up. I mean, again, he was killed in 1963. I mean, this is almost 70 years ago, where he is, golly, I mean, already speaking about the conflict going on in the Middle East. We see Israel, even back then not wanting to stand up for the people and doing what's right. Of course, we're looking at the one of the worst genocides in recent history. Absolutely crazy. And just to this is a clip that I think we've played before, but I want everybody just to understand the battle that the United States government is going through, because here's 30 years of proof of just Netanyahu is spreading the same message. Unfortunately, he finally found a president dumb enough to take the bait, but here is that bait that he's been planting for 30 years. Play this clip.
To produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a day.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom to do it.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year. It could be within a few months.
Maybe next week, huh? Maybe tomorrow morning.
I mean, guys, if so, my big message, I think, for today's live stream, Alex, and this will be the last thing that I have to say for tonight, is that this is not going anywhere. We're nowhere close to a conclusion. The only conclusion that is going to happen is you're going to see Iran with a tremendous amount of more leverage than they ever had. I have interviewed a lot of people on my channel. Alex, we've interviewed a lot of people, and Let's Talk Geopolitics over the last 3 months. And the key thing that we're hearing from these experts, and again, like you said, an MOU is simply BS. It's window dressing. It is Donald Trump and his cabinet trying to desperately get a pause, some breathing room as you know, he had his 80th birthday, he had the UFC fight, you have this great American fair that's turned into an absolute disaster, and honestly a great representation of what Trump's presidency has brought to the United States of America. And now, you know, we see, a week away from July 4th, it's supposed to be a great time of celebration, but unfortunately this war is only, going to end in more leverage and more power for Iran. And so, but yeah, the United States is going to fight like hell to try to prevent that. But ultimately, they're just moving further and further down this escalation trap.
Cyrus, thank you for sharing all that, and I appreciate you putting time and energy coming here. And the Sundays, of course, this is a great program, 15 episodes already into it. We polled everybody last year on your channel with the Cyrus Johnsson channel and said, everybody, are you guys fatigued from this Iraq war or Iranian war? And people came out and said, you know what? This is the world we live in. Keep delivering, guys. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you very, very shortly. And I think I want to end this on a little bit of a positive note. This is not all doom and gloom. There are countries, there are governments around the world that are trying to put forward. I live in one of them. I live in China. People said, if you think China's so great, move there. Yeah, okay, I did. But next week here on July 1st is the CPC 105th anniversary. And the city I live in here, Chongqing, shows how long-term government turns national strategy into local progress, building high-speed connections, expanding clean energy, upgrading manufacturing, and investing in the future of technologies through continuous planning. It's quite amazing. You'll see an image here of a new train. This track laying is the Chengdu-Chongqing Central Line, marks a shift from the major civil works to rail system, paired with the CR450, 400 kilometers H-class vision. It shows how speed can strengthen the Twin City economic circle. Imagine having one of those babies sitting in your country, connecting your major cities. Let's move on. The HSR and Land Sea Corridor, Chongqing-Kunming High-Speed Railway, has reached a major milestone. Guys, when you're driving in some of these trains in the country here, half of the tracks, or even 90% of the tracks, especially where I go, are through mountains. And the only time they come out is to go over a bridge. But I remember when I first moved here, it was hours to get to another city called Kunming, and now that has just dropped drastically. And again, that helps companies. Also, let's say Chongqing will closely work with Yunnan and Southeast Asia alongside the new international land sea trade corridors. Chongqing is becoming a powerful inland gateway linking Western China and global markets by railroad, river, and sea. Here's a figure. Over 40% green electricity supply. Chongqing is green transition. This city, if you used to look at it on CNN, go back, look at the photos that I live in, the city of Chongqing. It was doom, gloom, gray, couldn't see the sky. 300 days of sunshine here, I would say, for sure. This is not about individual projects, but a citywide shift towards cleaner energy, stronger and grid support, and lower carbon for future industry. And another milestone before we wrap up the show today, I just want to tell you guys, we congratulate Chongqing, 1.296 million new energy vehicles. Chongqing's green development is also industrial. In 2025, the city produced 1.296 million new energy vehicles, about 30 times the level of 2020. This marks a historic transformation from the traditional automobile base into the national hub for intelligent, connected, and lower carbon mobility. And again, Smart CQ, Mind Sports, drones and robots. China is stepping up its effort to develop its robotic industry and robots by adding drone robot events at the Chongqing Mind Sports game to a national trend, and public participants, youth training, and real-world intelligence. Guys, let's get back to the panel here. Cyrus Jansson's channel. If you're on the Reporterfy media, get on over to Cyrus Johnsson, hit the subscribe button. Again, a nice turnout from the iChongqing team. Thank you for the audience for coming in there, and thanks for the Reporterfy media. And Cyrus, you had some smashing numbers on your channel. My friend, what are we going to get up to here in the next few days? You tell me.
Well, the most important thing, guys, is that I'm actually boarding a train in about 7.5 hours. So our first train out tomorrow morning from Guangzhou. I'm going to be heading to Chongqing, meeting up with Alex in that city. Got some exciting things planned. We're actually going to be doing some walk and talks in the city. We're going to be doing a night walk and talk. We're going to get a film crew, so with some nice cameras so that we can enjoy the beautiful night scenes in Chongqing, the cyberpunk city of China. So look forward to some new awesome content coming out on the channels. And I just want to say thanks to everybody for showing up today. I know we brought in a high-level guest in Larry Johnsson. He's awesome.
Awesome.
His
So
insights
awesome.
are fantastic. I know that that's what you guys like to hear. So yeah, you can always count on this channel to give you guys, or this show, Let's Talk Geopolitics, to give you all the information you need. And we look forward to next Sunday's show. And thank you all for being here.
And video coming out what time?
I've got one coming out. I don't even know yet. I haven't scheduled it yet, but
What's the
it's
title?
on the back end of YouTube. I just need. It's going to be China's just launched new gold currency to take down the dollar, something along those lines.
There it is.
It's a really good video here. Excited to share with you all.
And head out over to Cyrus Jansson's channel. And thank you so much, everybody. If you're watching Cyrus Jansson's channel, oh man, I'm getting a bit tired here. Anyway, buddy, I got to get some rest because tomorrow I can't wait to see. I got to hit the hay. Everybody, let's roll the outro.
No, you too.
Cyrus Jansson, take it easy, guys.